Start out. Mayor, we're good. Okay, good evening, everyone. Our council public meeting on June 29th. There will be two versions of that special. One is special council meeting will be explained by the Commissioner of Planning, and the other. But other than that, we have our regular programming here where we are in emergency pursuant to Section 238 of the Municipal Act, and so we have electronic meetings. At this point in time, public notices due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 to protect all individuals, city faculties too, will not be open to the public and attends council and committee meetings until further notice. Public comments, the public may submit written correspondence regarding the agenda matter through the clerks at richmondhill.ca, and written correspondence will be submitted by 12 the day of the meeting. Also, two delegations, the public may apply to appear to be as an electronic delegate by video conference or by phone. Applications to appear as an electronic delegation must be submitted by the 12 o'clock noon. And we do have a number of those tonight. We also have through our city's procedural bylaw, section 8.1, council may receive written reports from staff in relation to future decisions, but save and except for providing directions to staff, no decisions shall be made by council at a council public meetings, and that's in our own city's procedural bylaw. I now have a public hearing statement to make, that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the city of Richmond Hill in respect of a proposed official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and or a plan of subdivision or condominium, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of city council to the LPAT and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there will be reasonable grounds to do so. So before we come forward, I would like to bring forward Mr. Kelvin Kwan, the commissioner, to explain why we actually have what seem to be two meetings tonight. Mr. Kwan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify tonight's proceedings, we have two separate public hearings of council. They are labeled differently only for the purposes of the fact that the first public hearing is a special council meeting dealing with site-specific official plan amendments to our official plan as initiated by the city, and they fall under sections 17 and 26 of the Planning Act. So they have a special name, but the conduct of and format of the public hearings will be identical to any other normal public hearing that we have. The second public hearing tonight will deal with site-specific applications, which will follow on the heels of the city-initiated official plan amendment applications, and they are being heard under the normal process of a council public hearing and don't have the same title as special. So effectively, they're both public hearings. They just have slightly different titles, but the format and the conduct and all the procedures are identical as far as the city's procedural bylaw on how we conduct public hearings.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we are here and we are at C2720, special council meeting. And at this point in time, we need a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, please. Councilor Silovitz, Councilor Liu. All those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? Hearing none. any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof of any members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Chair. And so our next item we have here is schedule item is 3.1 SRPRS 20097. And to explain the process, we have a staff member who will come forward and explain the application to us. And then beyond that, there are delegations that may wish to speak. There's people on behalf of the applicant that wish to speak, all for 5 minutes, please. And we will time that down. And at that point in time, we will bring forward the delegations that we have. So with that, I guess it's Ms. Von Hertz-Gerzel. Are you speaking on this?
Hello, Council and Mayor. Actually, it's both Brian and Andrew that will be doing the presentation. So I'll just pass the baton over to Brian for starters, and we'll continue with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sibel. And good evening, Mayor Barrow and members of council and members of the public. This item deals with 2 proposed draft official plan amendments to the city's official plan that are being initiated by the city. And both amendments relate to the conversion of employment lands. Next slide, please. As an overview, this evening's presentation will cover the purpose of the special council public meeting. Staff will provide an overview of the proposed official plan amendments that are before council this evening. And we will follow that up with next steps. Next slide, please. This special council public meeting is a statutory requirement pursuant to sections 17 and 26 of the Planning Act. Section 26 of the Act provides specific directions related to the updating of an official plan. With respect to public consultation and the adoption of official plan related amendments, Section 26 provides direction related to the adoption of an OP and all municipally initiated amendments to it. Section 26 also prescribes requirements respecting the timing and notice of a special meeting of council to allow the public an opportunity to speak to council regarding the proposed revisions to the official plan. Accordingly, this special council public meeting provides information about 2 proposed official plan amendments being initiated by the city. And secondly, it provides an opportunity for the public and stakeholders to provide comments on the proposed amendments. Notice of this evening's council meeting was provided via advertisements in the Liberal newspaper on May 21st and 28th, and in compliance with emergency orders related to COVID-19. Next slide, please. As indicated, the proposal before you involves 2 city-initiated amendments to the city's official plan, which are proposed as follows. Official Plan Amendment 18.1 is a proposed amendment to add automotive uses as a permitted use in the city's designated employment lands. This includes lands designated employment area, employment corridor, and office pursuant to the city's OP. An Official Plan Amendment 18.2 is an amendment to establish a new land use designation entitled the Leslie Street Institutional Area in the area along Leslie Street, south of Major Mackenzie Drive East. Specifically, this amendment proposes to add permission for institutional, small-scale retail, commercial, and office uses in the amendment area, among other matters. Next slide, please. And with that, the following slides will provide an overview of Official Plan Amendment 18.1 for automotive uses on employment lands. With that, I will hand it over to my colleague, Andrew Crawford, who will provide council with an overview of OPA 18.1. Andrew?
Thanks very much, Brian. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll provide a quick overview of Official Plan Amendment 18.1. Next slide, please. So this slide, the proposed Official Plan Amendment 18.1 deals with allowing automotive uses within employment land designations in the city of Richmond Hill, specifically the employment area, employment corridor, and the office designation in the North Leslie Secondary Plan. These designations would be modified to allow for automotive dealerships containing sales, repair, and service type of uses within these designations. This would not affect the ability for automotive dealerships to locate in other designations in the city that currently permit them. And it will not affect any of the other existing uses that are currently permitted within these three designations. It would only allow for that use as an additional use in this area. By doing this, this will allow the employment areas to continue to be used for high performance industrial, warehousing, and office uses that they are currently used today, and will continue to be the priority uses located in these areas. Next slide, please. I have to forget that I also need to click next slide on my screen as well. So as part of the condition for allowing these types of uses, there will be a few conditions on allowing these. So the first one is restricting these automotive types of uses to certain locations within the three designations, specifically to sites located along arterial streets and 400 series highways, which are noted to have good visibility and good advertising potential, as well as easy access from surrounding areas. As well, there will be the condition that this amendment will not allow for standalone sales or standalone repair and service area outside of where it's already permitted in a portion of the Newkirk Business Park, specifically along Enford Road and Industrial Road, which currently allows for standalone auto body repair and service facilities. We're requesting through this official plan amendment that the three uses, the sales use, as well as the repair and service use, be located within the same facility. Next slide. As well, there are some urban design criteria that we are including in official plan amendment 18.1, specifically the request that vehicles primarily be directed to be stored inside, in keeping with the existing policies of the official plan that do not permit outdoor storage. However, we are continuing to allow for outdoor storage, but these types of areas need to comply with a high standard of design, which will include low impact development features and locating it away from the main point of view, such as behind the buildings, with appropriate landscaping and screening measures installed in place. And we're also asking that these types of uses employ high level of urban design when their buildings are designed. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Brian, who will describe official plan amendment 18.2.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Andrew. So with respect to intent, the intent of official plan amendment 18.2 is to recognize the current function of the area in the Leslie Street area on the east side, south of Major Mackenzie Drive, and to establish policy direction to intensify the area for a mix and range of institutional and business-related land uses, and to do so in a context that is sensitive to the cultural heritage resources in the area. The amendment also provides to allow for a hub of institutional uses that are not otherwise permitted under the current employment area designation. And lastly, to provide compatible land uses to the south and west of the area, which encompass lands in the employment area and the neighborhood to the west. Next slide, please. One of the key changes to the city's official plan proposed under OPA 18.2 is direction to establish a new land use designation entitled the Leslie Street Institutional Area. Among other changes to the city's OP policies, establishing a new land use designation would require amendments to the schedules of the OP, and namely schedules A1 and A2. With respect to schedule A1, which sets out the city's urban structure, the proposed amendment would add a new Leslie Street Institutional Area notation to the schedule, which would have the effect of adding this area as becoming part of the city's urban structure. With respect to schedule A2, land use, the proposed amendment would add the Leslie Street Institutional Area designation to the schedule, which would have the effect of adding a new land use designation to the city's land use planning framework. With the establishment of the new designation, the proposed OPA would also add land use and design policies that are area specific and which would be applicable to development in the amendment area. Next slide, please. OPA 18.2 also establishes a policy framework with the following policy direction. Permission for office and institutional development, including long-term care facilities and residential uses that are ancillary to such facilities. Permission for retail and commercial uses that are small scale and which are complementary to office and institutional uses. Permission for building heights up to 10 stories. Direction for sensitive land uses to not locate near significant known air emission sources, and that development demonstrate compliance with the province of Ontario's land use compatibility guidelines. And the amendment would also set out requirements for development to be sensitive to cultural heritage resources and to apply the city's urban design guidelines to incorporate heritage buildings into the design of new development. And lastly, the amendment would also introduce a number of complementary changes to the enforced policies of the Part 1 OP. And those are outlined in more detail in the official plan amendment, which can be obtained on the city's official plan update website. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the official plan amendment process timeline. Presently, we are at the point of the statutory council public meeting, and this meeting follows a virtual public open house which took place on June 22nd, 2020. Council should be aware that the draft official plan amendments have been circulated to the prescribed bodies as required under the Planning Act for review and have been uploaded to the city's website. At this special council public meeting, city staff have presented the draft proposed OPAs for feedback from council, the general public, stakeholders, and agencies. Following this council public meeting in the summer to fall 2020, city staff will be scheduling meetings with landowners, the region, and stakeholders to obtain feedback. Staff will synthesize the feedback heard from the public and stakeholders and revise the draft official plan amendments as necessary. Staff will then bring forward the official plan amendments to council for consideration and adoption. And once adopted, staff will submit the official plan amendments to the approval authority, York Region, for approval. The city will also post the official plan amendments on its website and provide notification to those persons who have requested that they be notified and added to the notification list. Next slide, please. So with that, the purpose of this staff report before you today is to provide council and the public with an overview of the two draft official plan amendments that are being initiated by the city. The staff report has been structured for information purposes only, with a recommendation that all comments be referred back to city staff for consideration. With that, this concludes staff's presentation for this evening. We are happy to address any questions from members of council. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And, at this point in time, we'll ask on behalf of the applicant, somebody wish to speak at this time. Okay, that's fair enough. There's no one here at this point in time. Then
If I
I'll-
understand correctly, Mr. Mayor, isn't the city the applicant?
Yes, we are. So, sorry, I'm just following my.
Just wanted to make sure I was following the bouncing ball and I didn't misunderstand it.
You
Sorry.
Did a good job there. So we do have delegations, though. Let's bring Mr. Jonathan Law, sir.
Sorry, there's a bouncing ball. I missed that.
Just joining, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Law, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry, my internet disconnected for just a brief moment. I believe at this point you were asking for my comments on this?
Yes, as a delegate, yes.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, and also for all the public watching. I'd like to first, state that, I'm happy that there are movement within the city for all these things, but and with all due respect, then In my field of, I work in the field of traffic engineering. I have some concerns regarding the automobile uses and dealerships along the for OPA 18.1. I had reviewed the traffic impact study that was prepared in February 2017 for the Leslie and Orlando car dealership complex. And I had a few concerns regarding particularly the truck traffic, but also a few other areas in there. First off, the intersection, the location is rather close to the intersection of Leslie and 16th Avenue. And this intersection has not been included in the analysis, given the proximity as well as the major traffic issues that are typically experienced there during the AM and PM peak hours. I feel like it should be an intersection that should have been considered. The peak hour factors were also not, they were used as the default 0.92, and I just wanted to see if there was some methodology behind it. The other issue with this is there appears to be approximately 5% of the site traffic that is distributed into the Hedford Avenue on the west side of Leslie, which goes straight into the neighborhood there. I wanted to see if this traffic infiltration into the neighborhood is expected from the site, and if it is, then if there are any proposed mitigation measures that are being considered or applied, particularly if there's truck traffic in the area from this site, given the automobile nature of it, with the need for vehicles to be transferred into and out of the site, as well as any parts and other storage materials that need to be applied there. The last thing about this is regarding the driveway accesses that were shown in the, I believe it would have been a very preliminary site plan, showing 2 full move accesses directly onto Leslie Street, which seems rather forward given the significant vertical curvature on Leslie. I understand the location and that the traffic impact study had prepared a sightline analysis. However, it appears that it did not, I'm not sure if it considered the use of the type of trucks that may be using the full move accesses, that they could be up to full WB20 size, which would require a combination truck, and which would impact the amount of time that is required for the turning movements, and especially when providing a full moves left turn, that would cause other significant issues there. Lastly, and this is just myself as an advocate of transportation demand management measures, but I'd like to see if there is, maybe moving forward and possibly at a later time, transportation demand management plan that would be applied for this site if it were to go ahead. Personally, I feel like I don't really prefer an automobile dealership here, but that's my personal opinion, not my perspective on the whole thing. But that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Law. This will continue to be being discussed, so you'll have an opportunity to also do that. Linda Zhang. Welcome. Yes, thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
If you could please turn up your speakers.
Okay.
There we go. Thank you.
Better now?
Mrs. Zhang, you need to turn off your speaker sound completely, please.
Okay.
That should be better now, I think.
Sorry about it. Sorry about that. It's better now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Zhang, and I'm against the proposal for the following reasons. As this land is a landmark of Richmond Hill, we want to make sure it's used to benefit the residents of Richmond Hill and increase the value of Richmond Hill. We're proposing this land in such a way that it makes sure this will support growing business and attract young talents, which will increase economic growth and create a vibrant community of Richmond Hill. It's about the development of future of Richmond Hill. As a resident of Richmond Hill for 20 years, I'm going to leave with questions for all of us to take away. What's the master plan for this land and Richmond Hill? What's council and the community's vision for this land for the next 20 years? How have you tried to attract high growth and tech companies, which will create high skill jobs for Richmond Hill? Do you have any plans to attract young educated talents who will contribute to the tech space? Yes.
We have two official plan amendments before us. You are on which number? Which one are you?
I have no idea. So am I on the right order?
18.1?
Can you?
Just one sec. We're just. Okay, fair enough. Carry on. We have two issues here. That's why we're making sure we're understanding which one you're speaking of. And I think we've gathered that already. Go ahead. Linda, go ahead. You got it. You're off.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Okay.
Carry on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Okay,
Yeah, you're muted. You're muted again.
Okay, what about now? Oh my goodness.
If you're connected to this meeting twice, one with your telephone and one with your computer, can you please hang up the one that's on your telephone? Because that's why there's feedback.
Okay. Yes, it's better now.
Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Okay, and there are also funding from federal and Ontario government for the tech industry. I don't think will be for dealerships. And are these extra resources being considered and included in our plan? Finally, our neighbors, Toronto, Markham, and Vaughan are going into the high-tech and innovation industry. Toronto has a plan to develop the Harbor Fund to attract major global tech companies. And as GTA hosts the world's second largest film festival, Vaughan has a plan to build science, arts, and film related to, incubators. Markham has a plan to build Markham Innovation Science Park. What is the future of Richmond Hill going to look like? Secondhand dealership shops on a town like this? These are my concerns and takeaway to share with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next speaker is David Yin.
Good evening, Mayor and the Council. Do you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we can't see you, sir.
So how about now?
There you are, yes.
Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot for the opportunity for me to share my concern and address the concern against the Amendment 18.1. So my name is Dave Yin, and I'm a resident of Bayview Hill, which is an area which is right across the street of the proposed land of 18.1. So I would like to re-emphasize the objection from the resident in that area against that amendment. So when I'm talking about the residents, I'm not talking about just myself or just some residents. I'm talking about a large number of residents in that area. There's already a petition against that amendment. I believe right now the number is already go beyond 500. So I think Jonathan and Linda already expressed some concerns about that amendment. So today, besides the, say for example, the traffic, the safety, the environmental side effect, the negative effect, the proposed use of land dealership on the nearby neighborhood, I would like to, I think I share some of the similar comment to similar to Linda. I would like to focus on the value and the image of the city that the proposed land, the dealerships, the proposed use can bring to Richmond Hill. I would like to make, so first of all, I would like to make a comparison to our neighbor Markham. I think Markham, they have done a great job pulling into quite a few high profile companies into the city. So not to mention the employment opportunities and the revenue contribution those companies made to Markham. I think right now when people are talking about Markham, they have those big names in their mind. They have AMD, they have IBM, they have Qualcomm in their mind. So back to our case, we don't think, so first of all, we don't think auto dealership was the only choice we had. And we ought to be honest, we think it's a bad choice. So first of all, a lot of concerns, a lot of negative impact to that area, environmental, safety, convenience, and also the employment opportunities and the revenue contributions the auto dealership business can contribute to the city. It's not even close to those high profile companies such as high tech, financial, something like that. And also auto dealership, this business doesn't follow the cost-effective development patterns from the provincial government because it's a low employment density use of land. And in addition, to be honest, the auto dealership business is kind of outdated business. There's an article in CBC stating that the future for the traditional auto dealership is not that good. It's not bright at all. So again, that location, that proposed land is right at the core of Richmond Hill. We believe that location is a great match, a great fit for those high profile companies such as high tech, financial, and educational institute as well. So we know that Markham has put in so much effort trying to draw interest from those companies. We wonder, as a resident of Richmond Hill, we wonder how much effort we have put in, try to draw their interest and try to promote the use of that land to those companies. So basically, in short, we want, as a resident of Richmond Hill, we want in the future when people are talking about Richmond Hill, we hope they're not just gonna talk about our perfect location close to Yonge, our quiet neighborhood, our beautiful parks. We want people talking about Richmond Hill. It's a dynamic city with a bright future. We want more and more young people will choose to stay in Richmond Hill because the city will have a very good future instead of a like auto dealership town. I don't think that's going to be a good image for the city of Richmond Hill at all. So that's what I want to say today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Yin. Appreciate your comments. Our next speaker is Vincent Ho.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Vincent Ho, and I've lived on Brimwood Crescent by Brook Trail and Major Mackenzie over the past 21 years with my father and my mother, Helen Chu. And as some of you may know, my mother and I had started a petition on change.org last Tuesday, so just under a week ago. And so far, we've collected over 500 signatures from individuals who live in the city of Richmond Hill. Now, I'm here today speaking on behalf of those 500 residents, 500 households in Richmond Hill who are affected by Amendment 18.1. Now, our petition is simple and specific. In particular, we oppose the building of car dealerships and auto mechanic shops along the Leslie corridor. There are many arguments that I can raise to oppose that development of auto dealerships, and I'm sure you've heard many of them before. However, I will raise the arguments tonight, which I find to be shared amongst most of the residents who have signed this petition. Now, most people in Richmond Hill own a car and they drive a car, and we welcome auto dealerships and mechanics in our city so that they can serve the needs of Richmond Hill. But they don't belong on Leslie. They belong on Yonge Street, where they currently are. The surrounding residents are not opposed to commercial developments per se. We believe that Richmond Hill is more than just a bedroom community, and that it is a place to live, a place to work, and a place to grow our families. We support commercialization of the subject lands, as it is an increase to the commercial property tax base and improves the revenues that the city and the region can collect. It also brings jobs and employment opportunities into our community and in York Region. But that development can take the form of senior homes, retail stores, educational or healthcare providers, or office buildings. So let's not steer away from this vision. My first argument here is a job creation. It's a little suspect because creating a couple dozen part-time car sales jobs and auto mechanic repair jobs, it's just not going to transform the community in a way that would boost employment meaningfully. Car dealerships take up a lot of space for a very low density of jobs. If the OPA is really concerned about job creation, then it should be talking about creating jobs in the mix of retail, healthcare, commercial offices, high-tech, and business industrial parks. There's little precious space in the area, and auto dealerships are not an optimal use of these lands. Which brings me to point number 2, environmental contamination. Now, I'm not just talking about the obvious noise pollution, light pollution, and air pollution, which I'm sure the city is doing an active job in monitoring. The car dealerships and auto repair shops bring about an exceptional amount of pollution and contamination into our lands and into our soil, and sometimes could take tens and even hundreds of millions of dollars to clean up and remediate. And sometimes the city is left on the hook, or the governments are left on the hook to deal with it. It's not just another office building or residential development. Now, I know that the city staff is contemplating certain constraints on the exterior design of the storage of cars and putting up walls for soundproofing, but these are just bandaged solutions. Why give ourselves these problems in the first place, just for a couple of car dealerships? Personally, I've never seen a car dealership that doesn't create nuisances to those around it, and you can make a building look a little prettier on the outside, but it doesn't stop the other negative effects that car dealerships would bring. This brings me to my last point. Now, I'm not talking about, and that's traffic and safety hazards. I'm not talking about the few extra cars or employees commuting to work every day. I'm talking about the customers testing out newest models of cars, whether that's gas or electric, it doesn't matter. The cars need to be tested, and the delivery of new cars in the lot, and those people driving those test cars into the neighborhood of Bayview Hill and the surrounding communities. This is a residential neighborhood first and foremost, and the Leslie area frequents cyclists on weekends, religious institutions, restaurants, and an overall school neighborhood with young children. We have school children who walk to school and take the bus to school in the neighborhood, who will now be exposed to the dangers of motorists who are testing out their newest model of cars. And these aren't intrusions that can just be mitigated. The fact that the city hasn't done much planning around traffic congestion so far isn't an excuse. We can use common sense here and know that, and deduce that there will be increased traffic and increased intrusions into the neighborhood that is otherwise quiet. Now, we know that York Region and the province of Ontario have committed to growth targets, which include the expansion of these employment lands, but we believe that Richmond Hill can play a key role in that vision. However, auto dealerships do not belong in that vision and in this area. Car dealerships belong in Yonge Street, where they have always been located. Now, I know that no decisions will be made tonight, and I hope that I've given you something to think about, something that 500 residents have been thinking about over the past 6 days, and that number is only going up. It's going up right now. I think the number was about 507 before we started the meeting, and now it's over 525. So numbers only going up. Thank you for your time today, and hope you got something to think about.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ho. Now, our last speaker is, I believe, Brad Rogers. Yes. Did you wish to speak, sir?
It's Blair Wilk from Orlando Corporation, so I'm going to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, Blair.
Brad is going to follow. That's okay, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor Barrow. I think you can hear me now.
Yes, we can.
And members of council and city staff, my name is Blair Wilk, and I'm Vice President of Orlando Corporation. And I'm here representing our land interests in the city of Richmond Hill and speaking specifically to OPA 18.1. With the proposed OPA 18.1, we feel the city is recognizing the importance of jobs relating to automotive sales and repair service. As we all know, Richmond Hill is seeing fewer opportunities to provide dealership locations due to the intensification along Yonge Street, where they have traditionally been located. We believe automotive dealerships form part of the economic and social fabric of the city, and the proposed OPA will help alleviate this issue. Based on Orlando's involvement with automotive business, we know auto dealerships provide a variety of full-time employment opportunities from highly skilled auto techs, providing, sorry, I lost my spot here. My iPad's giving me a hard time. Full-time employment opportunities from highly skilled auto techs providing automotive repairs and auto sales associates who make a good living selling cars, as well as students working part-time just to make a few extra dollars put themselves through school. Dealerships employ anywhere from 65 to 85 employees, depending on the size of the dealership. So notwithstanding some of the comments already heard about low density, these are good jobs and lots of jobs at these dealerships, and providing a variety of employment opportunities across the board for residents of the city. These dealerships also generate approximately $180,000 in annual property taxes to the city of Richmond Hill, again, depending on the size of the dealership. OPA 18.1 suggests automotive sales be permitted within employment area so long as it's attached to a repair service component. I believe that's a step in the right direction. Auto sales should be considered employment no different than any other type of employment. Modern day dealerships house the complete gamut of uses, including repair and service, financing, tech support, sales, and management opportunities. Modern facilities are also typically designed with higher order urban design and materials versus what we've seen in previous generations of dealerships. Adding automotive sales as a permitted use with an employment area represents an upgrade to many types and numbers of jobs and kinds of uses currently permitted as of right within the employment designation. These are the kinds of jobs people who live in the city of Richmond Hill want and need, and is an opportunity to continue diversifying employment opportunities in the area. I was a resident in Richmond Hill for 22 years. We've only just recently moved slightly across the border, but I was a proud resident of Richmond Hill for 22 years, and I'm in support of some of the things, many of the things that the city is doing. In closing, I'd like to thank council for considering adding this use through the city initiated OPA, and thank staff for continuing to work with us on our specific application. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time or under the actual site-specific application later on in the meeting, if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Volk. Thank you very much. That's all we have. We shall again bring it back to local councillor, Councillor Liu.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for all the delegates and for all those who are watching live streaming right now. Thank you for taking the time to come out to this meeting. I would like to first thank our planning commissioner, for explaining the difference between the two meetings we have tonight. So what we're in front of us right now is 18.1 and 18.2. And I realize lots of the residents and the delegates, they would like to speak specifically with the car dealership within their neighborhood. So in regards to 18.1, we have 4 business parks in Richmond Hill. Not particularly, we're talking about the 2 in my ward, Ward 3. So happen the 2 applications. And the next meeting is in Ward 3. We also have Newkirk. We also have Beaver Creek Business Park. So I would first of all, as much as I welcome businesses in Richmond Hill, and but in particular, appreciate staff that they try to put a lot of conditions in their draft policy directions. But I have to agree with all the delegates. And last Monday we have an open house, and lots of comments have been generated. And as Vincent mentioned, they have a petition. I myself on Tuesday, last Tuesday, I sent out a survey to all my residents, and I received 1,017 response. Out of the 1,071 response, over 1,000 of them they're opposed at car dealership on our employment land, and only 62 in agreement in favor of a car dealership, and that reflects the residents' concern, and which is also my concern. Is I know that the condition is is good to have it on Arterial Street or closer to 400 series highways, but I think another consideration we should put in is the proximity to residential. For the Leslie Street, we have on the other side, on the west side of Leslie, there are lots of residentials, as mentioned by lots of the delegates tonight, which I'm not going to repeat. And they ask lots of good questions. They have lots of good inputs, and I thank you for that. So, after all, I would like to see, our new policy to include some more restrictions, which is, no car dealership, in proximity to residential or existing low density residential, to be exact, because it's going to generate lots of concerns. Safety, have you mentioned traffic? Okay, I'm looking at it. Noise, light pollution, and there's going to be a huge impact to the quality of life to our existing residents. So we also talk about compatibility. So I'm not totally against the conversion, but I would like to see if, in Newkirk Business Park, in Beaver Creek Business Park, they're not in close proximity to residential. That, I have no problem with, but with the one particularly along Leslie, I am not in support of the existing draft policy. And I would like to see some change in that to protect the existing residents. And nobody talk about the 18.2 and 18. Oh, sorry. Before I go to 18.2, when I look at page 4 of the report, the region staff, the regional staff, and the region committee, they are not in agreement with the conversion of the employment land to our car dealership. However, they are in approval of 18.2, which is adding institutional to the official plan. So I have no big issues on 18.2. I know that staff already knows there's some environmental issues there, some heritage issue there, so that would be addressed. So other than that, I know some residents has some concern about the 10 stories building over there, but there's a maximum of 10, so we can talk about that later. But I think the most focus will be on 18.1, and I would like to see some modification to our existing draft policy. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so tonight we are just gathering inputs from public, so no decision will be made tonight. So hopefully, I look forward to hearing to other colleagues' comments on this. Thank you.
And you'll do the motion to refer all back?
I will move the motion to receive all comments and refer back to staff. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just before we go, I thought I called for Brad Rogers at the beginning, and Mr. Walk took his place, but apparently there's a second speaker. So Brad Rogers, I'm sorry, please go ahead, and then we'll finish our portion of it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to Blair's comments that we are in support of the town's amendment to introduce dealerships in these employment areas. We believe that dealerships.
Sorry, Mr. Rogers, it's a city.
Sorry.
Okay,
In the city's amendment, we believe that automotive dealerships on Leslie Street will assist with higher intensification of residential uses along the Yonge Street regional corridor. Yonge Street, in our opinion, is transit supportive and is not the best location for dealerships. We can see this in other municipalities such as Newmarket and Aurora, where the dealerships are not located on Yonge Street. They're located on arterials such as Leslie Street and also on Highway 400 in Vaughan. We believe that automotive dealerships would serve as an appropriate secondary land use to the Headford Business Park. These new types of automotive types of development will contribute to an increase of development charge revenues to the city and to the region. Each dealership employs about 75 people, so the 225 new employment jobs would generate very well-paying jobs. If you compare dealerships to the public storage use to the south, 3 dealerships employing 225 people, and the public storage use to the south would employ less than 5 people. It is our opinion that a convention center or a banquet hall, which is currently a permitted use, would have a greater negative impact to the residents than a modern automobile dealership. Those are my comments, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for your time to support City's Amendment 18.1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. I apologize. So I'm coming up next on the speakers list is Councillor Chan.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you,
ask Mr. Mayor at this point
first
in
of all,
time
staff for
that if-
preparing the report. We actually did the open house.
Mr. Mayor,
Just 1 second.
I would ask at this point in time if Councillor Liu had anything to say. It's not really fair that he had the opportunity to speak, then a delegate got to speak. If he has a comment based on the delegate's comments, I think it's only fair the local councillor have an opportunity to respond. Sorry, Councillor Chan, but I just thought procedurally that was really weird, and I wanted.
So it's the call of the chair.
I wanted Councillor Liu the opportunity.
Fair enough. I'm going to return and ask Councillor Liu if he does wish to make a comment based on the extra speaker that I allowed.
I appreciate Councillor Barrow's suggestion, but not at this moment. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Barrows.
Okay. Councillor Chan.
Okay, so the time starts again. Thank you. Thank you, first of all, as I mentioned, the staff not only report, but they have been holding open house. And of course, I'd like to thank all the delegates, whether they are speaking tonight or actually, as someone was saying, have been expressing views or either through delegation, petition or some other form of means. I actually, before I further comment and support of Councillor Liu's motion to receive all the comments, I'd like to second that motion. But through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to address that to the Commissioner of Planning, because like some of the, I gather, people who are reacting to this either at the delegation or through other comments, we are dealing here now with the official plan amendment, which to me, if I understand it correctly, was the decision of council on February 26, which is included as an appendix to all the report, that council already mentioned about, well, not mentioned, it was carried on that at that time. City Council supports a proposed permission of automobile dealership to locate on employment lands. Now, that may be a different matter. Later on, we talk about individual application. But through you, Mr. Chair, to the Planning Commissioner, are we talking about OPA is a means or tool to get to implement or support council that motion that was passed on February 26th. Where does the OPA stand in terms of what's the purpose? Through you, Mr. Chair. To Planning Commissioner.
Commissioner?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start off trying to address the question, but I may have to turn some of the more technical details over to Mr. Lee. But yes, both amendments 18.1 and 18.2 are in response to the council direction of February to process these site-specific amendments for these conversions of the various uses. We've taken all the necessary steps in accordance with the Planning Act to implement this directive. And this hearing tonight is just one additional step in that process. And as Brian DeFreitas outlined earlier, there's the timeline to bring these amendments forward would be later this year upon further consideration of all the comments received to this point. So I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, Councillor Chan, but at this point.
Okay. Well, I think it's maybe a matter of communication. The way this is being approached, I would have thought, number one, first we talk about the applications, individual applications, and then we talk about what are the means of doing it. And I know some people are shaking, but that's what been talked about on February 26th of this year. So I can understand residents, in this case, primarily in Ward 3, and certainly because of the proximity of the application we're going to deal with specifically later on, is actually for people living across on the west side of Leslie, looking to the east, seeing the car dealership. So I fully understand the reactions and concerns, and they are legitimate concerns. And I truly understand that. So I think it has to make it clear for what purpose that specifically we're dealing with here tonight and later on with the OPA 18.1. I'm specifically addressing 18.1. And I also like to take this opportunity because it's offered for comments. I think that it was comment made, oh, maybe another business park is further away from residential area. No, that's not the case. In actually Beaver Creek Business Park on the west side of Leslie Street, is right at the back of people living in the southwest quadrant that beside the fire station and also through the Beaverwood Woods, the woodlot land there on West Beaver Creek. So I also hear from people in Ward 6 raising concern about if, now, mind you, there's a distinction need to be made, which Brian did. We are only talking about 18.1 OPA with car services only if it attached to, associated with, or linked with dealership, not just on standalone car services. But I think those need to be made very clear because residents, I believe in Ward 6, or perhaps in Council News Ward 3 as well, looking at one car dealership, but also about the distinction between service of autos standalone. So I think that from a communication standpoint, I will ask that from now on, need to be very clear as to what we're dealing with here to the residents. The whole comprehensive change is one thing on the OPA, and there are also specific application we have to deal with. But then I still need some kind of, perhaps, not tonight, but offline with the planning staff as to how, at the end of the day, reconcile with and align with the decision that council, through a motion that was carried on February 26, 2020, just in case, if at the end of the day, the OPA 18.1 is not aligned with what's been decided on February 26 of this year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to stress as a comment that please, that stress about the communication to be very clearly what OPA 18.1 is meant to do is a tool in relation to the application applications in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers, please? Councilor Silovitz? I'm just looking for hands here, folks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to thank staff for excellent report as always, and to all the delegates and to the letters, the communications that we received as well. I also want to commend the residents for setting up a petition online. I think that's very good work on your part, and that's exactly what citizen involvement should be about. So well done with that. The only comments I want to make here is that because this is simply for staff, this is an event, a meeting for staff to receive comments from us and from the public. First of all, I agree with what Councillor Chan was saying. I also have some confusion about the motion that was passed on February 26th, because I seconded that motion with Councillor West. So through you, Mr. Mayor, perhaps to Sibel, I would just like to know what is the balance here, and what is the protocols that we need to deal with, because we do have that motion, and now we're dealing with this with regards to the OP revision. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The motion back in February was with respect to the conversion requests. And at that time, council was generally supportive of the automotive uses in employment areas, but there wasn't any detailed direction. So what we've done is looked at what other jurisdictions are doing with respect to automotive uses, what the development applications are, and what are the trends with respect to automotive uses and dealerships in particular. And based on all that information, we're proposing this amendment to council for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
So back in February, that hey, maybe it's a good idea.
Okay.
Somebody, okay.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Carry on, Sibel, carry on. You were breaking up, sorry.
Sorry. So as I was saying, in February, the council direction was to consider automotive uses. We've taken that to another level of detail. And as I said, looking at what's being done in other jurisdictions, what are the trends in automotive uses, we've come up with this policy direction that I think provides an opportunity for more uses to occur within our employment lands without necessarily jeopardizing the true primary use of those employment areas, which is for the high performance, office, industrial uses that the policies still provide for.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It certainly helps make it clearer for me, and hopefully for residents and stakeholders alike as well. These are layers that we build upon each other until we get to the final incarnation that is approved by council and or the region. The only other thing I would like to mention is something that was discussed by a couple of the residents and by Councillor Liu, and that is about the traffic infiltration that will go into the Headford side of the residential neighborhood. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask again, whomever, if it's Sibel or if it's Kelvin or Brian, is there a possibility that
sorry, wait 1 second. I'm sorry, Councilor. Okay, I'm sorry, it's not very loud. Please go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, we're here to receive comments from the public and send them on to staff. We're now entering into asking staff's opinion of comments that residents have said. If you could please direct that we receive the comments, send them back to staff, and continue with how the meeting is supposed to unfold, Mr. Mayor.
These are comments.
Okay, I didn't see it as an issue. So, Councillor Silovitz, can you
Thank you, Mayor Barrow. I just have one, just one small question. So when you speak about traffic infiltration from the industrial commercial side to the residential side, if staff could please make sure that a discussion is had within traffic engineering that maybe axle limits notices are put on the intersections where the entrance into those residential neighborhoods appear, and time differentials not permitting traffic at certain times to move through the neighborhood on the opposite side of the street. Those are all my comments, and again, thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Councillor Pirelli.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for everyone delegating this evening. You'll see a very stark difference between the comments that we heard from the delegates and the comments we heard from council. I'd like to point out that the comments from the delegates, particularly Vincent Ho, who represents over 500 and growing petitioners. I want to be crystal clear, Mr. Mayor. If we were voting this evening, my vote would be no. I stand with the residents of Ward 3. Under no circumstances should there be any dealerships along Leslie facing the residential neighborhood. So I want to be clear, Mr. Mayor, I stand with those residents that spoke here this evening. No question about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to everybody that's coming out tonight and to provide input. This has been an interesting article, or an interesting report that was put together by staff, and I appreciate the as Sibel said, the kind of next step in the information that we've received. To be frank, well, let me start on a positive note. The institutional part, 18.2, I don't have a problem with that. Actually, I think that that's probably an improvement on the on the official plan the way it stands right now, and I think that that will provide a more specialized cluster in an area that I think will benefit from that. So I'm all for that. I'd like to see us go ahead with diligence, but go ahead with that for sure. The one with the car dealerships, 18.1, I'm far less enthusiastic about, and the reason that I'm less enthusiastic about it is that, and this was made mention by one of the delegates, I've always envisioned that particular piece of land housing something that's probably a higher use, I guess, or a more high performance, I think, to use words in the official plan use than a car dealership. Although I will, in fairness, and at this point in the discussion, I will say that I have heard from some of the folks that I've spoken to and so on. It was surprising to me how many jobs and the quality of jobs that a dealership can provide. So I do understand that, and in fairness, I think that it is a better use of those lands than what I thought. I just wish that we could have had another kind of use to be contemplated. But I do think I appreciate the process, and I do appreciate that we're looking into making a wider range of uses available for businesses in Richmond Hill. I guess if one of the things that I think needs to be looked at by staff, and I hope that staff will do this, is that I think the car industry, or the car retail industry, is changing a lot. If you look at some of the new dealerships that are going in Toronto right now, they're not the same sprawling, big lots full of cars and so on that we've seen in the past. And I think that there probably is an opportunity with some really stringent urban design guidelines and some really stringent, not restrictions, but rules of engagement on uses like this that would maximize the use on and minimize the amount of land that is needed for that use. I'm not totally convinced that the site plan application that we're going to be dealing with later, for example, reflects that kind of progressive look at what the future of a car dealership looks like. Now, I will fully admit that I'm not the owner of a car dealership, so I'm just going from observation, and as we continue this process, I would expect that we would learn more about it. But I would say that I am convinced that if this does end up being a use that we're going to be offering to our employment lands in general, I think we need to really put a fairly bold line around what can and can't be done and what our expectations of what it'll look like. So one of the other things I would just finish up, that business park is in almost everybody's backyard. I mean, there's residential spaces on both the east and west side of the Newkirk Business Park. So I'm not sure that Leslie and the proponents of this to see if there's some sort of an agreement that we can come up with that works for everybody. So those are my comments. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That's just before we call the vote. I was just going to make a comment, Councillor Farrell.
If I may also, Mayor, please.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Munch. I just need to see your hands go by.
I'm sorry, my fault.
Go ahead.
So, you know, interesting discussion today relative to the discussion we've had previously when the applicant came forward in discussion. I think, you know, to bring Porsche and to bring high-end dealerships into a corridor on Leslie Street, where there is a major corridor with hundreds of employees in a high-quality area. And some of the new dealerships, I can say that you look at the Toyota dealership on Yonge Street, and you look at how they're utilizing water and protecting the environment is really something that is, you know, leading edge. And I think some of them are some of the technology companies like we have here in Richmond Hill, Tesla, for example, that are down the road. So I think I would say that we need to keep the dialogue going. Absolutely, we have to listen to all stakeholders. I appreciate the residents' delegation, but I think we really do need to look at the Orlando lands that are east of Yonge Street, for example, east of Leslie Avenue. You know, I looked at the report again today, and I read the staff report a couple times today on all the various areas. I looked at I thought it was very, very well done. I'd like to, you know, say staff job well done. And I hear the residents, so the concerns of the residents that should absolutely be heard. But these are employment lands. The region's reports are very clear as to where they need to go. I'm a bit surprised that the regional representatives are looking at, given the motion by Mayor Barrow and the Markham mayor. What's funny, it was funny to see that some of the other people in our council, I'm not sure what happened there. But Sadie, I hope that staff are looking at all the report that was done, look at the regional official plan, working within the guidelines of the province as is directed by us, as written in the staff report. And I hope that we can find that balance and have this dialogue going forward, as opposed to, you know, missing the opportunity of putting in leading edge opportunities here in Richmond Hill. Because as was received by the letter by Honda last week on Friday, I believe it was, where they said, you know what, we can't do Leslie. And the dealership on Honda is to be discontinued. So are we saying we don't want that type of product to be coming to Richmond Hill? Is a very big concern of mine to make sure that we do have an employment opportunity. 89% of our income here in Richmond Hill is residential based, which is the lowest in our region. And seeing Richmond Hill is at 89% growing, I'd hate to see our fiscal situation and our employment situation and our quality jobs opportunity needs to keep in balance. So although I absolutely want to listen to the residents and the voting public and we serve them, we also have to balance of employment and looking for good quality opportunities in great leading edge technologies and promote an area such as the automotive industry for leading edge. So I'd like to keep that balance. I also want to keep a sober second thought for the other side of the argument that is important to be stated, and I hope staff are hearing that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crowley, did I see your hand for a second time?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you did, and thank you for a second opportunity. Mr. Mayor, I want to be abundantly clear that under no circumstances should there be any dealerships along Leslie abutting or across the street from a residential neighborhood. That Newkirk area that is surrounded by housing is a complete disaster in Ward 2. As a former Ward 2 councillor, I can attest to that. Mr. Mayor, I want to be abundantly clear that we've recently had applications, and other cities have led the way, where dealerships have been incorporated with multi-residential above them on major arteries like Yonge Street. They exist in other cities, and they've been proposed here in Richmond Hill. And I look forward to seeing those dealerships staying on Yonge Street and using the land with a mixed use opportunity of residences above it. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move an amendment. My amendment is that my comments and those of the residents of Ward 3 be referred to staff only. That's my amendment, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, I'm not gathering the purpose of that. Everybody's comments are going back.
No, Mr. Mayor, my amendment is that my comments and only the comments of the residents of Richmond Hill that delegated this evening should be referred back to staff.
Well, the rest of it would be the rest of members of council.
Let me repeat myself for a third time, Mr. Mayor. I would like my comments and those of the residents of Richmond Hill to only be referred back to staff. That's my amendment, Mr. Mayor. I think there's an implicit bias by some of the delegates that don't live in Richmond Hill to see dealerships, especially since that's the business they want to attract to their properties. And so I don't believe their comments are necessary at this time. And the comments of council's comments, you know, they're not really, you know, they were kind of here and there, nothing very specific. So
point of order, Mr. Mayor.
That's my amendment, Mr. Mayor.
That's fine. Thank you. Yes, go ahead, Councillor West.
I don't think that suggesting that other councillors' comments are here or there is particularly respectful in what you'd expect at a council meeting. I would hope that all 9 of us on council would be able to have an opinion that was valid. And I would hope that, you know, we, like the residents, of course, all are being heard. So I would like to that to be voted on, or ruled on as a point of order.
And I would agree. I think, Councillor Pirelli, that
you agree to what? What's the point of order? What was procedurally incorrect with me making an amendment?
It's very disrespectful.
Councillor West, would you stop talking?
Mr. Mayor, what is procedurally incorrect with me making an amendment?
Our procedural bylaw states that we have, anybody that presents any kind of information, we refer it back to staff. So that includes members of council, not only the citizens that were there or members of the projects that wish to have them up, you know, dealt with. I think it has to be all of us. I can't see that that's proper. It doesn't meet our procedural bylaw, sir.
So, Mr. Mayor, you're free to vote against the amendment.
I'd like to speak to the amendment.
Oh, man. Pardon? There's no second. Sorry, just 1 second here. I'm getting.
Mr. Mayor, this seems unusual. Is there a seconder for this amendment?
That's exactly what I was trying to find out. No, there isn't a seconder for that amendment at this time.
I can't second.
Well, Mr. Mayor, since there's no seconder, I'll continue with my commentary then on the second round. So, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to be very clear that the residents have spoken. We have a petition of 500 residents. I think that what they really want, Mr. Mayor, is they want to see leadership from this council. I think what they want to hear is that potentially allowing dealerships in employment areas will give them kind of a road in to put dealerships facing their houses on Leslie. And I think that's what they're really against. So, Mr. Mayor, I'd move at this time that we disallow dealerships facing and abutting. No, you don't want to do that?
No, I'm saying it has to be referred, everything is referred back to staff. So if
Right.
you're creating another amendment.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
That we add that the commentary going back to staff is that no dealerships be allowed along Leslie. That's the amendment I'd like to add a B. How's that, Mr. Mayor? We have the motion. I'd like to add part B, that notwithstanding the fact, if the clerk could capture this, notwithstanding the fact that we're going to allow the conversion of employment lands to allow car dealerships, they should not be facing residential neighborhoods. That's the part B I'd like to add, Mr. Mayor. I think it's very important. The residents spoke loud and clear. And I think we need to show leadership and do that right now and get it out of the way, because I think all members of council agree with that.
Is there a seconder for that, please? Seeing none, sorry, Councilor Barros? Sorry, I couldn't see your hand there. Oh, there is a seconder. I don't believe this is proper. I honestly don't. This is a decision being made, and that in all facts as far back to our city bylaw.
Mr. Mayor, that's the comments that I want to go back to staff. B, notwithstanding the fact the land conversion will take place, that no car dealerships be allowed along Leslie Street. Those are the comments I want to go back to staff. I want to put it right in the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, providing direction to staff, no decision shall be made by council at council public meetings. You're saying this is a direction to staff?
No, it's a comment to staff, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I don't see that that does any direction, it doesn't do anything, so. Okay, there's a mover and a seconder for this motion, this amendment. All those in favor? And I'm gonna have to.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Chen here. Can I seek clarification on the amendment?
Yes, sir.
Hi. Well, I don't see everyone. I just see the amendment motion. I think I understand where the mover is coming from for this amendment. I want to be absolutely clear through Mr. Chair, perhaps from either from you or from the clerk of night. This is meaning comment, a specific comment. It's not a direction to staff, and as such, it's not a decision because you, as mayor, all council members, our specific procedural bylaw. I don't have it right in front of me. I believe you point out 8.1 that is not for decision, but this is basically a specific comment, that go back to staff. So yes. Is that the case, Mr. Mayor? I just want to be very clear on which we are voting on.
You're voting on the motion to amend.
No, I know that. It's pretty obvious, but it's the motion as adding a specific comment to not a direction or decision.
No, I'm saying it is a comment.
Mr. Mayor?
I'm saying it's a comment and it can stand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So I get the move of a specific comment added, but it's not a direction or thank you.
Okay. Can I have, we need to.
I have a comment, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, I can't, this is the problem. I'm blocked again.
No, I understand that. That's why I'm speaking. When the time is right, I'd like to speak.
Oh, go ahead. This is on the motion to amend.
Thank you. This is not the purpose of a council public hearing. I mean, all of the comments that the staff, that the residents have made are very valid and they've been really well stated. All of the comments that individual councilors have made, I think, were very well stated. The
point of order, Mr. Mayor.
The purpose.
Go ahead.
Can you direct the councilor to speak to the motion to amend, please?
Motion to amend is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm doing, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, please.
The motion to amend, I think, is inappropriate because from what I understand from the procedural bylaw and from an email that was sent out the other day about council public meetings and the purpose and to remind us what we're supposed to be doing, is that we are simply to receive all of the comments from staff, from the public, from members of council. we've done that. We don't need the recommended recommendation from staff in the staff report is to receive all comments, which we've done, and they will all go back and be looked at by our staff. We will also, as councillors, have an opportunity in the interim to speak to staff specifically about some of the information that we've
Point of
learned.
order, Mr. Mayor.
So I would like it if we could stick to the purpose of what council public meetings are all about.
Please, Councillor West, we've already dealt with this. And the fact is, it is somebody's, and it's here with a mover and a second. Their information and their thought is that they don't think that car dealerships should be allowed on Leslie Street.
And that's fine. That's one of the comments.
That's one
of them.
That's one of the comments. So there it is.
Recorded vote, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, voting on the motion to amend. The addition of clause B is on your screen. Regional Local Councillor Pirelli.
Absolutely.
Mayor Barrow.
No.
Councillor West.
No.
Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Councillor Chan.
No.
Councillor Silovitz.
No.
Councillor Barrows.
Yes.
Councillor Munch.
No.
Regional Local Councillor DePaula.
Yes.
That motion goes to carry.
Okay, can we move back to the motion on this screen here? I just want to
wrap up, Mr. Mayor, if you allow.
I'm sorry.
The wrap up, if you allow, or you want to make your comments before
Yeah, I
me.
just want to make one comment just on 8.2 on the Care First Seniors Land. This is a community services project that they want to add. So I'm very, very happy that they've got here, and they're hopefully they'll move forward in the employment lands 18.2. So yes, back to Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to briefly wrap up that I would like to once again thank you staff for their report. Lots of effort has been put into it. And I would like to also, on behalf of not only that 500 petition from Vince, and I also received over 1,000 response. So on behalf of the Ward 3 residents, I would like to send a very strong message to our staff that is not preferred to have a car dealership along Leslie. And hopefully they can focus their effort on, 18.2 than, spending any more time on 18.1. So that's all my comments, and I appreciate. Thank you for all my other council members' comments and your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Mr. Mayor, as a secondary motion, can I do a very quick wrap up as well?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just for
point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor New saying
really, we have
the
two
motion.
wrap-ups now.
I think it's also important that from my end to say that reflecting also.
Chan, please, not mute him, sir. Gotta get your. Councillor?
I'm finished, but somebody tried to unmute me. Thank you.
I'm trying to say, Councillor Liu asked it for it. We need to get through this, please. Not everybody can speak after everybody speaks, please. Thank you. Okay, we're done. Let's move on.
Just need to vote, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you. That's what I'm trying to do. All those in favor of all returns back. Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Okay, Mr. Clerk, we are now moving to Council Public Meeting C-2820. If you would set us up for that, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if we can just have an adjournment, what we will do for members of council is to stay on this meeting. We need to stop the live stream and start a new live stream for a different meeting. So
okay, so please don't step away if you don't mind, till we get through this. There is, one has been, there are two here and one has been withdrawn. So I guess I'll say that when other people can hear me.
Motion to adjourn this meeting, Mr. Mayor.
27?
Yes. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, we adjourn this meeting? And
Yes, we got that. Councilor Crowley, seconder. Councilor Paul, thank you.